Hi everyone, thank you for joining us in our 2024 complimentary webinar series covering the FAR, or Federal Acquisition Regulations. We are coming to you live today from Washington, D.C., and we're glad you're all here. Okay, a bit about this series. As usual, all of our webinars are complimentary and recorded. The FAR has 52 total parts, and we will run through them sequentially each week on Wednesdays and Fridays at noon Eastern Time. The recordings and PowerPoints will be posted within 24 hours of the webinar's ending. You can find the recordings on our YouTube channel simply by subscribing to it using the link you see on the screen. There's no cost. You can find the PowerPoint on the SlideShare site using your LinkedIn credentials to log in. Again, there's no cost. We also offer sponsorship opportunities. If you are interested, please send us an email to hello@jennifershells.com. And now for how to sign up for this series. Unfortunately, there's no bulk registration, so you must register individually for each webinar. If you go to the Jennifer Shells website, navigate to the section called the FAR, and you'll find the individual registration links. Also, the recording links will be posted here upon the completion of each webinar. Please note that we covered the FAR in 2020, so if you're eager to get a jump start, please find these historical recordings on our site. Navigate to the Webinars tab and scroll down to the section, the FAR 2020. Please note that because it has been 4 years, many of these regulations have changed and updated, so please use this as a reference tool only. And now a bit about us. We work with established federal contractors worldwide, helping them to navigate the market. Our services range from market analysis reports to contract vehicles and compliance. Some of the contract vehicles we support are listed here on your screen. For more information, please visit our website. Okay, those were our services for federal contractors, but we also provide marketing and advertising services for organizations who are selling to federal contractors. We can add the extra muscle to your marketing efforts via our newsletter ads and webinar sponsorship to in-person events. Please email us and ask for a media kit if you're interested. We are currently offering a discounted offer in our newsletter, which reaches over 34,000 subscribers. If you want to place an order or have any questions, please send us an email to hello@jennifershells.com. As you know, congressional hearings on both the House of Representatives and on the Senate side are open to the public unless otherwise stated. We have a list here of the upcoming schedule, including the date, time, building, and room numbers. Most meetings take place in the Dirksen, Rayburn, or Cannon buildings. If you are selling to any of these departments or agencies, attending the hearings can be a great way to gather information, understand the process, and also network with influencers. Please join us for our Summer Shorts webinar series this August. We will be hosting 30-minute GovCon webinars with industry leaders. The series runs for every day for 2 weeks, starting on Monday, August 12th, and ending on Friday, August 23rd. The webinars will begin at 12 p.m. Eastern Time, and as usual, they are free to join. Both the registration and the recording links can be found on our website under the tab Webinars. Here's the lineup for week 1. These leading ladies in the federal sector will cover various topics, including contract finance, contract management, capture, pricing, and compliance. And here's the lineup for week 2. These ladies in the federal sector will cover various topics, including including capability statements, BD, marketing, subcontracting, and MA. Again, these webinars are complimentary and recorded, so please find the registration links and recordings on our website. Please join us for these upcoming complimentary webinars with various Apex accelerators. Jennifer will be covering GSA schedules as well as federal marketing for our local Apex Accelerator in Virginia. These are complimentary and online webinars, so please join us. Jennifer will also be teaching 2 classes for the Maryland Apex Accelerator, one on marketing and one on GSA schedules. These are in July and in December, and once again, complimentary. Our webinars are free thanks to our long-time and generous corporate and in-kind sponsors. Please allow me to introduce them. We would like to thank our friends at GovEvents, the premier platform for posting events related to government and government contracting. You can find all of our webinars and our events on govevents.com, as well as recordings from our past 600 plus webinars. We also want to thank Tom Johnson and his team at Set Aside Alert, the go-to publication for contracting opportunities for small, women-owned, veteran-owned, HubZone, and 8A firms. Visit Set Aside Alert for more information. The Fairfax Economic Development Authority has an online calendar of events and webinars. We want to thank them for posting our events and webinars on their calendar. The Virginia Apex Accelerator at George Mason University offers free one-on-one counseling to established government contracting firms in Virginia on federal, state, and local procurement topics. If you are interested in learning more, please use the links provided to explore their services, review homework recommendations, and register for live training and find useful links to agencies and other self-directed learning. One-on-one counseling is limited to eligible client companies. Appointment requests are handled in the order they were received and based on counsel availability due to high demand. Join the Greater Reston Chamber of Commerce's monthly GovCon Council meeting to network with peers, learn about upcoming events and opportunities, and help to shape future programming. The meetings take place the fourth Tuesday of each month at 8:30 a.m. at the Greater Reston Chamber of Commerce. The next meeting will be on July 23rd. Do you want help winning government contracts? But BidSpeed can help. Users can find contract opportunities from federal, state, and local government. Additionally, you can search for teaming partners, incumbent point of contact, expiring contracts, compliance matrices, and also proposal templates. Create your login today at bidspeed.com. BidSpeed is an official partner of the U.S. Small Business Administration's ETG and Power to Go program. Events are the ultimate engagement channel to bring government and industry together. 68% of government personnel report that they attend more than one event each year. The Federal Business Council, or FBC, has worked with government and industry for 45 plus years to create gatherings where ideas are shared and to help government achieve its goals. This includes agency industry days, cybersecurity symposiums, technology expos, and offsite meetings. The FBC provides full lifecycle meeting planning and event management. With over 5,000 meetings under their belt, the FBC has experienced systems and personnel to make your next event exceptional. Learn more at www.fbcinc.com. Now, last but not least, please check out our friends over at GovBrew. GovBrew is the most read GovCon newsletter, keeping thousands of GovCon professionals in the loop with news, updates, and opportunities in the federal contracting market, all in a fun and accessible email that only takes 5 minutes to read. It's 100% free to join. It goes out every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday at 7 a.m. and it's filled with great content, event postings, webinars, and more. We encourage you to sign up at govbrew.co, or you can use the QR code you see on the screen. And now the reason we're here today is to cover FAR Part 46. Please meet today's speaker and welcome Mark Snyderman to the webinar. Mark, we're so excited to have you with us today. I'll turn the floor over to you.
Great, thank you so much, and thank you to Jen Schaust for the invitation to join this series. I did this I think back in 2020, I guess, and it's a lot of fun, and I think there's a lot of great information provided. So let's welcome everybody to FAR Part 46. Next slide, please. So I think this is one of those critical pieces of the FAR that most of us, myself included, don't go and look at enough. But it's really pretty important when you think about it from a high level. So what I'll do today is kind of give you some base terms and some basic understandings of FAR Part 46 and what you need to know. And then I outlined all of the FAR for you. We won't go through every single provision. That would be a total waste of your time because you can all read and the slides will be available. So I kind of picked off some critical pieces and important things for you to know. And I separated those throughout the presentation. So the first thing to really think about is what is FAR Part 46 and why is it so critical? Well, it's about inspection and acceptance. So inspection is, determining the acceptability or non-acceptability of both services or supplies furnished by the contractor, right? And acceptance is the government's acknowledgement that a particular contract output or product adequately meets the pertinent contractor requirement. So when you look at acceptance of items, that equals payment from the government plus transfer of risk of loss of work from the contractor to the government. So it's pretty critical because this is how you get paid. And from a government contractor perspective, it's probably the most important thing that's going to happen for you. You got to deliver the product and you want to get paid for the product or the service. Next slide, please. So let's look at how this all works, right? So the contract is going to tell you what you need to deliver, right? The contract should have specificity in the statement of work, the performance work statement, the specifications for the product, what the delivery requirements are. The government's going to have inspection rights, which are usually delegated by the contracting officer to the contracting officer representative or another designated official. The government will provide acceptance, which can be unconditional, conditional, or constructive, and we'll talk about that in a minute. And then the government completes the receiving report, right, which is written evidence that indicates the government has accepted the supplies or services delivered. Next slide, please. So, like I said, the government can either unconditionally accept, conditionally accept, or provide constructive acceptance. What do I mean by that? So each one is important to understand, right? So unconditional acceptance is that the supplies or services conform to the contract's requirements. Conditional acceptance means the supplies or services don't conform, and there's a corrective action that needs to be taken by a certain date. So they may accept conditionally and say, okay, this particular service, you've met almost all the requirements, we're willing to accept it and make payment, so long as you agree to correct X, Y, and Z by a particular date. And then there's constructive acceptance, which means the government performed no inspection and notified the contractor of rejection within a certain number of days. So typically, the contract will specify that within 7 days, if the government doesn't accept or deny or reject the services or the product, then it's constructively accepted. Next slide, please. So FAR 446 goes through these particular sections, right? There's a general discussion, which I kind of just gave you the general overview of what we're covering within this FAR section. 46.2, the contract quality requirements, the contract clauses that will be flowed down in your flow down provisions, the government contract quality assurance, acceptance, material inspection and receiving, warranties, and contractor liability for loss. Next slide, please. So 46.1 is the general terms. Like I said, you're going to look at what is conditional acceptance, critical nonconformance, minor nonconformance, and all those provisions are, the definitions are included in the FAR provision. Next slide, please. And then you have your contract quality requirements. What are the actual requirements within the contract? How do you determine what the quality required is? And that's going to be different depending on whether you're looking at commercial products and commercial services, or if there's particular requirements that are set forth in the statement of work. So we'll look at, what are the standard inspection requirements? What are the higher level contract quality requirements? And in some instances, the government can rely on inspection by the contractor themselves and not be doing their own inspection. And everything really comes down to what is the technical complexity of the service or the product. And so what is the government willing to accept in that instance? Next slide, please. And this will provide you what are the relevant clauses that are going to have the flow downs. So 46.301, you'll have your contractor inspection requirements, and they're going to be different based on fixed price, cost reimbursables, time and materials and labor hours, fixed price research contracts. Each particular contract will have its own specific manner in which this is flowed down, and in which you're looking at the quality assurance plan and the inspection and acceptance rights. And those will be flowed down through the appropriate 52.246 clause. Next slide, please. So government contract quality assurance is rather important, right? So how are you going to perform quality assurance and how are they going to look at your quality assurance plan to ensure that you actually are performing to spec, right? How is the government going to inspect and know that you're doing what you said you were going to do, whether that be from a service perspective or from the product perspective? So look at the source and the destination, and determines whether or not, you also have to look at whether or not you're below the acquisition threshold in terms of whether they're going to inspect at destination or not, right? So in terms of, are they going to come on site to look at the product being manufactured, or are they accepting that the manufacturing is done correctly and they're just going to wait and see what the product looks like? All these things are determined and agreed to. So the quality assurance surveillance plan is rather important. Next slide, please. So this is what I call takeaway number one from this. So I'm going to give you, I think, 4 takeaways here that are the critical components for this FAR section. Number 1, know the inspection clause included and the contract requirements for quality. You have to build a quality assurance service plan, the QASP, right? And most of us look at the QASP when we're writing proposals, and we have to provide this as just another deliverable. But you have to look at it for what it really is, which is it's super critical and hypercritical to you getting paid and the delivery of goods or services being accepted. So you need to check the inspection clause, you need to check the contract requirements, and write your QASP accordingly, right? So it needs to provide the government oversight personnel on contract surveillance roles and responsibilities. And you make sure that you have the what, the when, and the who of inspection rights. And that way everybody is on the same page from the very beginning, being the government and the contractor, as to what's going to happen, when it's going to happen, and who can inspect and where they're going to inspect. Are they going to come on site, or are they going to do inspection when the goods are provided? So this is I would say, it's one of those things that the QASP is, it looks cookie cutter, but it should not be, and it should be tailored to the actual contract. So make sure you're checking the inspection clause and understanding what rights you have and what you need to do, and include those in that QASP, and make that a very formal document that you agree to with the contracting officer. Next slide, please. These next sections are subparts 46.407, where we're going to talk about non-conforming supplies or services. And as I said, I'm just going to kind of jump through some of these. We don't need to read every single word of the FAR. I'm sure you've all done that on a daily basis because you like to sleep. And that's why you're here, is so that we can kind of summarize things for you and give you a better understanding of where to really look. So 46.407 is the non-conforming supplies or services, and it gives the contracting officer what they should do, how do they reject, right? So they should reject supplies or services that are non-conforming in all aspects, right? But there is always the opportunity, they have to give the contractor the opportunity to correct or replace non-conforming services. But the government always reserves the right to charge the contractor the cost of government reinspection and retests. So this is where, especially in product and manufacturing, where you need to be sure that your QASP is correct and you understand exactly what what conformance will mean, because this is when it can get rather expensive for a contractor if the contracting officer is indicating that they're not going to accept and that they're going to reject. Next slide, please. So takeaway 2 is your inspection clause rights. Inspection clause gives broad rights to the government to inspect and test work performed or supplies delivered, but it doesn't permit the government the ability to perform inspections in a manner that unreasonably interferes with the contractor's performance, or that will increase the cost or amount of work required by the contractor. The Corps has to avoid any action or inaction that might result in unreasonable interference or delay. And here's the such as for what does unreasonable interference mean? It means failing to review deliverables or make inspections in a timely manner. So again, we talked about the QASP and how important it is. It might say that the government needs to inspect within 7 days or within 10 days. They fail to do so, or they make inspections 30 days later, and they're being unreasonable in that instance. Denying or failing to obtain contractor access to government premises on which contract work must be performed. So if the part of the if you're providing a service and you need to get on access to a specific building on site, and they fail to give you that access, they can't hold you to that standard. Conducting inconsistent multiple inspections, requiring a higher standard of performance than that established in the contract. So if they go above and beyond what's in the performance work statement or the statement of work or the specs, and say that this is the standard, that's unreasonable. Unnecessarily directing the contractor to stop work. Remember that only contracting officers can issue stop work orders. Do not accept stop work orders from anyone else. And directing contractors to perform work outside of the scope. Next slide, please. Now we're into the piece of the FAR that works on that discusses acceptance. So which is, as I said before, the acknowledgement that the supplies or services conform with the applicable contract quality and quantity requirements, either before, during, or after delivery. And it is the responsibility of the contracting officer specifically. And each contract shall specify the place of acceptance. They should issue a certificate of conformance, but it's not always used. And title doesn't pass to the government until formal acceptance. So understand that from an insurance perspective, that you own the goods until such time as the government has accepted. So make sure that you're specifically covering those goods in your insurance, and you have the proper insurance to do so. Next slide, please. Material inspection and receiving reports. The agencies prescribe procedures and instructions to evidence government inspection and acceptance. So they have the use, preparation, and distribution of material inspection, receiving reports, commercial shipping and packing lists. These are all ways in which we can look at what type of reports are going to be issued to show acceptance. Next slide, please. So takeaway 3 is what happens after they accept. So once formal acceptance has occurred, the contractor is generally excused from further performance. That is unless it's 1, otherwise specified in the contract, 2, there's a latent defect in the product or service, 3, there are fraud or gross mistakes that amount to fraud, or 4, there could be a warranty. So next slide. So warranties is a provision in 46.7, and note that warranties are not mandatory for the government to request, and it will then the contracting officer has to look at what product or service they're purchasing and determine whether a warranty will be needed and should be requested, and that's going to be upfront. You're going to know on the front end when you're proposing against the RFP whether a warranty is going to be needed and what that warranty will look like. So ensure you understand what that warranty is, because it's obviously critical to you in terms of what do you need to do post-contract, post-acceptance. What is your continued requirement and continued obligation to that particular product or service? Next slide, please. And you can have what is the liability for loss or damage to property of the government. So this 46.8 will describe the policies and procedures for limiting contractor liability that occurs after acceptance. So it doesn't apply to commercial products and services, and really is looking for high value items like a high unit cost. So things that are over $100,000 per unit, or as designated by the CO as a high value item. The government won't relieve contractors of liability for loss or damage to the contract and item itself, except for high value items. So next slide, please. So takeaway 4, it's our final takeaway, is what are the government's remedies if it is not accepted, right? So the standard inspection clauses do not have a requirement for the government to detail rejection, FAR 46.407G does. It's in the best interest of the government to be specific and promptly communicate issues. Part 2, government's remedies are generally require the contractor to correct the deficiency, correct the defect itself, or have it corrected by another contractor, charging the original contractor for that expense, obtain a price reduction, and the FAR specifically states that all situations are to be dealt with collaboratively with the COR and the CO. So if we find that the government has rejected your service or product, you really want to make sure that you're getting into that conversation quickly and specifically with the COR and the CO to understand what has happened, why are they rejecting, how could you correct it, because this is where costs can really drive up on the contractor to fix what may have happened, or if the government goes and determines that it's going to have it fixed by another contractor, your costs could really skyrocket from the procurement because you didn't perform or deliver to spec. Next slide, please. And this is just the review slide. So FAR Part 46 establishes quality assurance initiatives in federal contracting to ensure contracted supplies and services meet contractual standards. The contracting office will verify compliance and address nonconformance, and the contractors are responsible for controlling and inspecting the quality of their supplies or services. Quality assurance is conducted by the government at appropriate times and locations to ensure contract compliance. Acceptance confirms the satisfaction of contract requirements and can include warranties, and contract clauses will outline contractor responsibilities and inspection requirements with liability for government property loss or damage, typically relieved post-acceptance, except in the instance of high value items in certain conditions. Next slide. So I'd like to thank everyone for attending. Appreciate it. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me. I'm with OGC Solutions. You can email me at msnyderman@ogcsolutions.com. That's msnyderman@ogcsolutions.com. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mark, for such an informative presentation, and thanks to everyone for joining us today. As mentioned, you can always catch the recording on our YouTube channel within 24 hours, and you'll find over 600 webinars on government contracting there. That's it for today's webinar. Thank you again, and thank you to everyone for joining us.